Okay, man. Well, that was a basketball game. My goodness. The Kings and Warriors are tied up at 2-all, and I'm going to attempt to have a take about the insane game we all just watched. I do want to touch on the other series a bit too. But man, you just talk about great offense after great offense with a kind of weird last 2 minutes with the Kings getting a couple shots that they maybe didn't love, although the Harrison Barnes shot at the end there was okay. But also the Warriors with the Steph timeout and the challenge on the Looney illegal screen, like that was kind of rough. But for most of the game, the offense is just wild, man. I mean, you have just De'Aaron Fox in general. I mean, whether it be getting pull-ups on Looney drop coverage or that ridiculous shot that he had over Draymond with 30 seconds left or whatever, that three. But then on the other end, you've got like that little give and go play that Steph and Jordan Poole ran in the fourth where like Steph, he brings it up, throws it to Poole, comes around the Looney screen. I think De'Aaron Fox kind of went the wrong way on it and he like knew it midway through on the replay. You could see his face. Steph getting a three off of that one. I think right before that or not long after that, they ran just a classic Clay, I want to say it was a down screen to get him something on the right wing. Sabonis was high up on him there, as he was on most of the Warriors screens. One of which I remember resulting in like Kevon Looney getting something at the basket, I think from Clay on a similar thing where Sabonis was high up on there and then, you throw it down to Looney. As I'm thinking about that, there was, I want to say, a Wiggins floater in the fourth quarter where it was just, your classic Steph-Draymond pick and roll. I think they brought two to Steph, Draymond on the roll, and then a Wiggins cut. If I'm not appreciating Steph enough, I mean, there was one play where Steph screened for Draymond, and the Kings did an okay job of guarding it, and then he just shot a three over Davion anyway. He had one play where he beat Davion off the dribble, but Davion was still playing him really close. Like, you've got Keegan Murray, who was just flying across screens, getting into one dribble pull-ups for threes and everything, or he just had the guts to take like a corner three or whatever, which, it took him a minute, understandable as a rookie, but, Keegan is here now in this series. You know what I mean. For the regular season, Keegan was very good. I just appreciating offense and shot making. And, with this said, Draymond had a great strip on Sabonis, which with what could have been like a transition thing for the Kings. Of course, in the third quarter, they opened up with Draymond on De'Aaron Fox. And, I mean, I do remember at least one time where Fox was able to draw a foul on Draymond on like a line drive sort of thing. But it did at least result in like the Kings offense slowing down for at least a little bit of time. I guess the question, like specifically for guarding Fox, is like, do you bring two on him consistently, or do you just keep on telling yourself, hey, listen, if we can keep someone in front of him and we can get the jump shots out of him, then we're willing to live with the result? I don't know, but yeah, that whole thing was just nutty, dude. And now this whole thing is a 3-game series, and I mean, this is the second time this series where the offense on both sides has just been so great to where it's a little tougher for me to find just obvious adjustments either side. Because it's just so difficult to bring two against either one of these teams. It's difficult to help with how much shooting and movement is out there for both of these teams. I mean, I haven't even gotten to Malik Monk, who I remember there was like one time where Looney switched onto him and he beat him off the dribble for something. Jordan Poole's attack in the rim was much better in this game. Although, as I say that, I think my most memorable one from him was one where he didn't actually score, but like he initiated the attack off the catch, which then it was the kick to DiVincenzo, and then he's driving, and it eventually ends up in Clay's hands. This was the end of that third quarter play with the Kings defense scrambling. That's like a signature Warriors type of thing. I don't know. I mean, I think it's safe to assume that moving forward, we're going to see minutes with Draymond on De'Aaron Fox. As far as starting the game on him, I mean, it's possible. I highly doubt it would be for the entire game because, I mean, that would just probably gas Draymond out too much. So yeah, that was a lot. And I look forward to it again, whatever the next game is. I don't really know off the top of my head. Let's talk about the rest of the playoffs for a little bit. So, the Kawhi injury sucks. I think we all agree on that one, especially with how good Russ has been, and you had the Norman Powell 40 bomb and all that. Let's get to Lakers-Grizzlies Game 3, which featured a disaster of a first quarter for Memphis, and then the rest of the way, they actually played pretty okay, but by that point, the deficit was so huge that it didn't really matter, even if Ja Morant made it interesting at the end. So, in the first quarter, I thought the biggest thing slowing Memphis down was AD in a drop, as there was a number of plays where like they missed a pull-up jumper with him in a drop, whether it be like Brooks or Desmond Bane or whatever. It also felt like there were a few possessions there where the Grizzlies could have had something at the rim, but they chose instead to kick it out very quickly because Anthony Davis was just kind of lingering around the basket, or the Lakers were packing the paint like crazy. And of course they were playing off of Dillon Brooks, and he couldn't make anything, and the Grizzlies just really could not make anything, along with, I do think, being like honestly a little intimidated to start the game to score inside. and then it just ballooned into whatever the hell the lead was. And then, as the game went on, I think they got a little more comfortable with Ja going at AD, just even if it's a simple screen. I mean, I know AD's really good, but you got Ja Morant. He did draw at least like 1 or 2 fouls on AD from those situations. They did run some things where like they would have Bane or Ja on opposite wings, and then one would throw it to the other, and then the one who got the ball would immediately get a screen on like the elbow and be able to go baseline. And one of those times it was AD guarding Jaren, and so the idea there was like when Jaren went to screen for the ball, they zipped it to the other side, so it kind of like pulled AD out of the paint a little bit. They also, after that disastrous first quarter, made at least a few of their threes afterwards to where, eventually the game became like a normal blowout as opposed to a bloodbath. And then, of course, you had Ja just going crazy with transition stuff in the fourth quarter and stuff. So I think for Memphis, it's a matter of like, you got Ja Morant. You might just have to run some simple pick and rolls with him, whether it's with AD in a drop or from somebody else, but AD's still going to be lingering. But if you can like try to get AD involved in something beforehand to sort of pull him out of the paint or have somebody screen him off ball, whatever. It does feel like the Lakers have been willing to give Desmond Bane the pull-up jumper, at least in moments here and there. So, like, just off of that, you could try just seeing if Bane will knock more of those down. You have to assume he's going to if you're the Grizzlies. And that's kind of where I'm at. I know some people want Dillon Brooks, like, pulled from the rotation for the sake of Luke Kennard. I just don't think Taylor Jenkins is going to do that. So, yeah, and shout out to LeBron, who had a really cool layup or dunk thing in transition. Now we get on to the Cavs and the Knicks. We now have a 3-1 Knicks series. And the games in New York did not go well at all for the Cavs, as their offense was really rough. And, Donovan Mitchell missed a few. I do think late, like in the fourth or the fourth in general, it did seem like Donovan was like kind of chucking a little bit. Like, I guess if the shots go in, I'm not complaining, but it did feel a little bit like that. Besides the third quarter where they were able to really get stuff out of the Darius Garland, Jared Allen pick and roll, whether it be Garland getting a pull-up or, well, it did feel like he got a lot of pull-ups, or it would have been like a kick out to LeVert or whatever. Cleveland's offense has had a tough time, man. I think it's a combination of the Knicks. They are bringing 2 to the ball sometimes, not every single play, but they're doing it more than ever. They are, of course, playing off of Okoro or whoever whenever the Cavs are going to their bench. Okoro did beat them on a couple of drives, and I think he made like 1-3, so he did the most he could, but even so, there's still those possessions where the paint is getting really, really cramped for Cleveland. And also, I do think the Knicks' offensive rebounding did affect Cleveland's ability to not get out in transition, if that made sense. Because, the Knicks, they had 17 offensive rebounds, and, hey, shout out to Josh Hart, because that one, we'll get to the Knicks offense in a second, but Josh Hart, amazing game, love the guy. But it's not just the 17 rebounds on offense for the Knicks, it's also the plays where maybe they don't get the offensive rebound, but they keep it alive for a second. Those little types of plays also make it to where Cleveland can't really get out in transition as much as they'd really like to. And I mentioned Josh Hart, but also Mitchell Robinson, who has just been great in this series, even if, like, up until this game, the box score numbers weren't huge, but, like, the rim protection and all that has just been so good from him. And, in fact, I do remember a play late where the Knicks put 2 on the ball, and it was Evan Mobley in the post versus Mitchell Robinson. He took, like, a turnaround jumper that didn't really have a chance of going in. And, hey, look, man, I was doing the Evan Mobley on offense spiel every time I brought up Cleveland leading up to the playoffs. I thought he was going to score more points up to this point in this series. I just thought the growth off the dribble and in the post was going to really make the Knicks pay for bringing extra attention on guys, and he hasn't. He's been fine, don't get me wrong, and I still think very highly of his potential and all that stuff. But anyway, on the other end, so Jalen Brunson did get his opportunities to cook in one-on-ones against like Garland or, I think he had like a couple possessions on LeVert or whatever. I will say every possession in which Brunson is not being guarded by Okoro, it just doesn't feel good. And he's getting into his signature like elbow jumpers, whether they're from 3 on a step back or something like from mid range. I think they ran a couple of cool like screens with Josh Hart for him. I think that's how they got one of their threes late in the third quarter off of that action. But also, man, the Cavs, they did bring 2 to the ball on Brunson, and I'm remembering like a couple of RJ Barrett drives from the corners or whatever that were really good. I also remember a Barrett handoff action going at Mobley, which, to be honest, I didn't really know where the foul was from Mobley, but they called it. But still, RJ's been looking comfortable on his drives. The play where they brought 2 on Brunson in the fourth, and then he like just gets it out of his hands to Josh Hart on the other side, who then dunks it. Like, that was the signature, just Josh Hart is amazing play of the game to me. Besides the offensive rebound that then went out to Brunson for the dagger, and also besides the one in transition where Hart got it and then went right at Jared Allen to score. The Josh Hart trade, man. Let's see, the last place we're going right now is to the Heat and the Bucks. Celtics Hawks is on, or it's going to be on as I'm doing this. If that series gets to 2-2, then we'll start to talk. Okay, I would like to believe the Celtics will go up 3-1 after today's game is over. But as for the Heat and the Bucks, I mean, listen, shout out to Jimmy, who, I mean, the dude made 4 threes, and most of them were just not a whole lot of action. It was just him basically taking a three with the dude just kind of guarding him. So we're getting playoff Jimmy, who randomly becomes Reggie Miller at certain spots. There were a couple of plays where like Duncan Robinson got a handoff action, and then Brook Lopez was in the drop. I remember a Jimmy Kyle Lowry screen where Drew had to like fight around it, and he was like there, but I mean, shout out to Kyle Lowry for making a pull-up three. Like, this Heat Bucks series is very close to being like, okay, wait a minute, what the hell's going on here? Now, of course, the biggest thing is still Giannis's injury. I mean, we all get the situation, but still, you can't hide the fact that it's 2-1 Miami right now. Unfortunately, the injury bug isn't just going for Giannis. The Oladipo one, man, that was a gut punch.